Legend of the Crystal Dragons. Book 1, as read by the author. Chapter 1. For centuries, the people of Endon and Itria have honored the worldwide royal decrees to protect the crystal dragons. The creatures were magnificent, so much so that their meat, hides, and eggs fetched a high cost on the black market. The meat and eggs were a delicacy for a select few groups, while the hides were both leather and embedded with patches of crystal. There were 6 tribes: jasper, aura, quartz, topaz, obsidian, and malachite. Jasper and quartz seem to have naturally congregated in the north, near Itria. Obsidian had ruled the lands of Endon before King Heron I got his hands on them. Now their only proof of existence was the boneyard scattered across the plains. Topaz and malachite had also, at one time, inhabited Endon. They were not extinct, merely driven north in a strive for survival. Eggs were often left behind in their parents' hasty, fearful departures. Upon birth, however long it took, either the dragon died or fought for its life and found its parents. Self-reliance, although half the time those juveniles left on their own were poached. The dragons appeared to have a symbiotic understanding with the humans. When they shed their hides, the people could come and harvest whatever came off. In return, the humans helped preserve their lands. It was a perfect agreement until the first heron, there were 3, and the demand spiked for dragon items, which as a result caused a drastic decline in their populations. Poaching was one of the main issues which brought about the decree to begin with. The other was the legend, passed down over generations. It declared that if one were to collect the skulls of all 6 tribe alphas of the crystal dragons, one would gain immeasurable power. If one were to collect all 6 skulls, one would gain goddom. The peace came to an end when the twice before mentioned King Heron I, Ceres, came to power. He began slaughtering the dragons indiscriminately. It was his determination that eventually he would find the skulls of the alphas. In his lifetime, he collected only 2 of what he needed. He'd had an expert come and verify, to fulfill the legend's promise. Proof of his rampage littered the land in dragon boneyards. In an effort to save and protect the tribes, neighboring kingdoms took in the refugees, hoping to outrun the war and murder. It made little difference, for in death, King Heron I left his legacy with his son. Heron II, however, unlike his father, was more strategic in his handling of the legend. He held a dragon handler in his employ, rare and hard to come by, to study the behaviors and lives of the dragons in order to sort out the alphas. From there, he could pick them off at his leisure, or so went the rumors. And who knew what Heron III thought? He'd become withdrawn and closed off since his mother's death years before. Anyway, who cared? Not Layla, though she was certainly thinking about it hard enough. She combed her dirt-ridden fingernails through her mid-length copper hair before sweeping it into a ponytail at the back of her head. She went inside her small abode to wash her hands after being in her garden so long digging for worms. She'd been trying to humanely lure and capture the birds pecking at her vegetables in the village garden. Usually they were too swift for her crudely made traps, making off with their delicious treat. Wiping her hands dry with the plentiful fabric of her handmade skirt, Layla sighed and looked through the adjacent window. The mountains beyond her cozy little town provided a breathtaking view, of which she could never tire. Then, she also thought she would never leave this place. That was soon going to change. Plopping down into a chair at the table near the pot-bellied stove, Layla went over it again in her mind. In less than a day, she would be headed off in search of the clan of the Crystal Dragons, led by the tenacious Valeth. It was an outfit dedicated solely to the purpose of the preservation and protection of the tribes. Layla had found one of their posters on the underside of her boot yesterday, crumpled and covered in mud. They probably nailed it up on their last tour through Astera, and then it must have been knocked from its post. Layla kept mostly to herself, preferring nature over humans, and with these tribal massacres it was no wonder. It was worth noting that, despite this, she made friends easily, and had even kept a few. She tried talking them into coming with her, but they were more interested in the handsome brothers who'd just moved into town. So, by this time tomorrow, she'd be on her way. Looking at the worms wriggling in the tin mug on the table beside her hand, she figured she ought to start tying up some loose ends. As usual, my work is available Kindle and paperback. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe or connect for more.